Good morning and welcome to the August DAC Monthly Webcast. I'm Jennifer Stafford, the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support, and we welcome you here today to our first of the 23-24 school year DAC presentations. We're so glad that you could be here with us this morning. We've got a few of our staff that are going to bring just some updates about the upcoming school year, some training, some information for us to be able to provide you with the most up-to-date information as far as assessment and accountability. We're so glad that you could be here with us. We know that it's a busy time. With the back to school, it is the start of the school year for many of us. Kids are going back. There is much excitement around leadership activities and opening day and professional development. And we're so glad that you could be here with us and take time. For those of you that are busily taking care of students and those preparations for the 23-24 school year, we're glad that we can provide this recording for you. But for those of you that are joining live, we welcome you, and I'm so glad that you could be here today. We truly hope that your 23-24 school year is off to a good start and that it is a wonderful year for each of you. Now, we have a lot of activities happening today. So we've got just a brief activities information for you today, and we want to provide just a brief DAC webcast for you, and thank you very much for all the effort that you've put into the data review. We've got several staff that are out today, and or they are not on this webcast, rather, let me say, they are taking care of SDRR and the data and your good questions around the data review period. Joining me today is Shara Savage. She's got a few updates for ACT and that optional senior retake. Then we also have Lisa Jett, who is with us. She's got some updates around the kindergarten screen, and that is actually happening now. And taking your questions is Jenny Larkins. So if you have questions, please email dacinfo@education.ky.gov, and we will answer as many of those questions as we can for you this morning. I'll finish us out today with an overview of the data review or the quality control process that we have in place, and given like an overview of the whole entire process of the data review and the quality control that leads us to public reporting of school, district, and state accountability data. So we want to talk about the whole process and acknowledge that this data review has been challenging, and wanted to thank you very much for your efforts along those lines of data review. So at this time, I will turn it over to Shara, who's going to bring us some updates about the ACT. Good morning, Shara.
Good morning. Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. As Jennifer said, I hope your back to school is going wonderful, and I wanted to come to you today and just give you some key reminders and some things to think about as you start that ACT Fall Senior Administration. And just a reminder that it is an optional test for our students. We just want to be sure that everybody has the opportunity to take it if they want to take part in that opportunity. So just real quickly, we've announced these dates, but I'm still getting some questions about the dates. So we will kick off the fall administration on the first window is October the 3rd. And as you know, for the fall, you can choose test window 1. You can do all your testing in test window 1. You do have those 6 days, online testing days, to get your initial test day in, and then start your makeups. Or you can do the traditional way, to start in test window 1 and then complete in window 2 with makeups. Or I know many of you have emailed me about, some are going to be on fall break in window 1. So if you're comfortable with it and it works good for you, the plan works good for you, you can test. You can do your initial testing starting on October the 17th, and then use those additional days for your makeup. If you're having trouble or you have questions, you know that you can call me or email me, and I can always help you formulate a plan if needed. We can walk through some of those logistics. So now, here are some key date reminders that take place this month. So I know there's a busy time. You're just getting back in the door. So I wanted to bring these days to you. So August 25th is the date is the deadline you will need to complete your select test date task. And if you have a school who's not participating or those alternative schools, make sure that someone goes in there and just marks not testing and the reason why. And then we have August 31st, and that's when you need to have your tech team to complete your site readiness. Have all that done and have those computers locked down so those updates aren't running. So we want to do that by August 31st. And then September 1st is our accommodations request deadline. So if they have already had their accommodations approved, in the spring as a junior, or maybe they have taken a national test or a district test, then all you will need to do is move those pins. But of course, then if a student is new to you or newly diagnosed, you will have to go in and request those accommodations. So the deadline for that again is September the 1st. Now, I wanted to bring this to your attention because I know we have a lot of new DACs this year, and even for our season DACs. These are 2 wonderful resources to download or print off. Is the schedule of events, and that tells you each task and the deadline around each testing window. And then ACT has a ACT interactive checklist, and so you will check off those key deadlines and tasks that need to be completed. So both of those are wonderful resources for new and our seasoned DACs. And now, so I want to announce and get these out for you. You can mark these down on your calendar, and the links are provided for you there on the slide. These are our office hours. So as we have done in the past, we will come together on these dates, and they are scheduled around those key deadline dates. And so we will provide support for you. ACT will be on the line. I will be on the line, and other KDE members. So we work diligently to get all your questions answered during that office hour. So those are very valuable as new DACs and to our seasoned DACs as well. Now, we have 2 policy changes this year, and I wanted to just remind you of those changes. So for this year, this form that you see on your slide, the consent to release information to ACT that's associated with accommodations. This form, we have reviewed it here internally at KDE and have found that this form is not required or recommended. So if you see this, now ACT material will still say that it is required, but we have worked with ACT and they understand our policy and they are good with that as well. So you can just disregard this form that is associated with the accommodations. Now, collecting the parental consent. So you've heard me in training talk about the importance of collecting the parental consent for any student who is under the age of 18. And in the past, we have told you written signature is acceptable, electronic signature is acceptable, but new for this year, a verbal consent is no longer an option. So and when I say electronic, you can do that through Google Forms. And I have learned that IC also has an option in there for you to give it, for parents to give an electronic signature. So that is acceptable as well. So the two forms of collecting the signature from parents is written and electronic. The verbal is no longer an option. And as always, these consent forms do not transfer from year to year. So even if you have a junior who had a junior who is now a senior and you received the permission last year and that student is still under the age of 18, you will need to get a new consent for that student this year. So that is all I have for you at this time. I will stop here and ask if there has been any questions related to ACT. Ms. Jenny?
Shara, there have not been any questions come in as of this time.
Great. All right. Well, at this time, I will turn it over to my colleague, Lisa Jett. Lisa?
Thanks, Shara. Good morning. I'm going to provide you with some K-Screen updates and some reminders as we're entering into our K-Screen window for this year. Just keep in mind that the K-Screen window is 15 calendar days before the first instructional day and no later than the 30th instructional day. You'll want to check the online management system to ensure teachers and students are showing up. If they are not, please reach out and contact me, lisa.jett@education.ky.gov. I would be happy to assist you. All data must be entered into the online management system by October 15th. And please do not forget that the self-help and social emotional skills must be completed during the K-Screen window. I did want to let you know that the Curriculum Associates and KDE will be offering office hours during the K-Screen window to assist Kentucky's educators with the K-Screen process. These are virtual meetings. They will be bi-weekly. Starting next Tuesday, August 15th, it will be from 2 to 3 Eastern. We will have set topics for each office hour and then leave time at the end for questions. Topics for the first office hour will include Infinite Campus preparations and online management accounts. So if you're having difficulties with students or teachers having them log into the online management system or they are missing, please come to this office hour. We'll be able to assist you in the office hour. To join the office hour, please use the link that's provided at the bottom of the screen. Jenny, that's all I have. Are there any questions?
There are no K-Screen questions at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Shara. At this point, we want to thank our district assessment coordinators for the diligent work of reviewing our fall data. This is one step in the entire quality control process. The fall data review is a step in the entire process. So for particularly our new district assessment coordinators, I wanted to provide a complete picture of what that quality control process looks like so that you can understand where we are in the process and where we're going. So data quality, as you can imagine, is very important, especially when we get to public reporting. So we put in, as a state, multiple steps for the quality control and quality assurance, so that when we get to public reporting, that it is as accurate as it can be. For the assessment results, you have those. Those are not changing. That information from your KSA, your alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment, your ACT data, your access, alternate access, all of that data has been shared with you. And the process that we're talking about here is not part of that assessment data, but a part that leads toward accountability. And we talked multiple times on this broadcast about the difference between assessment data and accountability data. So that assessment data are those individual student reports, the individual student scores, things of that nature. And all of that information is in the school and district hands and can be utilized moving forward with the curricular decisions and instructional decisions for the 23-24 school year. The accuracy process that we're discussing this morning is on that accountability. So when we start talking about 100-day rules and things of that nature, that leads us toward those accountability pieces and that reporting around the indicators, overall scores, status and change levels, those type of accountability measures. Now, the quality control process that we've developed in Kentucky is unlike any other state in the nation. Most states, they get the information from their vendor, they put it together in an accountability system, and they send it out. Well, in Kentucky, we value your input and your insight into the students and the data around your students that you have. So as a state agency, we ask you to help us with that quality control process. It has really 4 different steps. And so we are at step 2 here on the slide. You can see that the arrow, but we've started in the spring with what we call getting the rosters right. And during the spring, if you were here as a district assessment coordinator, you took these steps, but if you were not, your predecessor had a lot of effort and put a lot of effort into reviewing those rosters. And during that roster phase, we really ask that schools, your building assessment coordinator helps our district assessment coordinator with the task of identifying the students who should be tested and should be on those rosters. If the student, for some reason, needed a medical exemption, they were sick, they were out for an extended period of time and couldn't be tested, then that's the time period that the non-participation requests come through. At that time, we also ask that the demographic data for our students are reviewed and updated within Infinite Campus if it's wrong. We also, during that roster phase, ask you to look at how long the student would have been in the school or district to verify that that student should be accountable to that school or district or not. That's all around that 100-day rule. We have multiple types of tools and resources to help with that in the spring. During that spring roster phase, we also have a look at the cohort data. That's the 4- and 5-year graduates. So that work, there was a lot of effort that went into that phase of getting the roster right. Then what we do over the summer, the data side of the Office of Assessment and Accountability then processes those requests, those tickets, and puts those updates into the spreadsheets and releases those back to schools and district staff for another review. So this is the second phase, the second step in that quality control process is the fall, we call it the fall data review. Generally happens right at the 1st of August, because that's when we've gotten the graduation data complete around those deadlines for graduation. So we put those back together and send those out in spreadsheets for a second review of individual student data. So this is the second time that we've gotten to look at individual student data, and requests can be again made for changes to that individual student data around again those demographic data that includes accountability and accommodations, whether the student is an English learner, the different types of lunch status for our students. We also look at all that demographic data. So this is the second time that then we were able to look at individual student data and request changes. The third step generally happens is called the quality control day. So at this point, we take all the information from spring rosters and the data cleanup, that roster cleanup in the fall, and then we put together that with the accountability data. We're having it later this year. Generally, we have it a little earlier than October, but because of the change element that's coming into the accountability system, we've got to have the accountability standard setting meeting, and the local superintendent advisory council has to meet and approve some cuts around those accountability scores. We're having it a little bit later this year as we have in the past. So we at that point on the quality control day, then we have those cuts around accountability in place, and that'll be the first time then we will see preliminary accountability data. At that point, we're looking on quality control day. It is preliminary data because we ask you as district assessment coordinators to look at the data again, but this time for big systemic issues, things that would impact multiple schools or multiple districts across the state. So it's not a time for individual student changes, but a time for reviewing for big systematic changes. And I'll give you an example that we caught several years ago is that the alternate assessment student data did not get into the overall file. So that was a systemic error because all of those students who had taken part in that alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment, it was called K-Prep at that time, were not in the data. So that was a systemic issue that impacted multiple schools and districts. And then we had to go back and correct that error before then it went out publicly. After quality control day, we'll rectify any issues found. Then at that point, we're planning to release then in the school report card. So at that point, the data is as clean as it can be from individual changes and the systemic changes, if those were found corrected, and then released in the school report card. Then finally, the final step will be we call the 10-day regulatory review. It's in statute that the schools and districts have one last opportunity to review the data for individual student changes. And then at that point, then in a third time for individual student changes will happen after the public release. So then if there are changes then during that 10-day regulatory review period, then files will be updated, and then the school report card will then be updated if there are any changes that need to be made. So just a high-level overview of the quality control process so that you know kind of where we are in the process and the system as a whole, getting toward that quality data prior to public release. Now, we do understand that this has been challenging this year because of the back to school return. We always face challenges with the fact that we get the data in a time frame that it's right when we're returning to school. And we really do appreciate you taking the time, because due to your critical review, there was a systematic issue found in the data. So at that point, when it arose as an issue that not all the changes from the spring rosters and all those tickets from the spring rosters didn't get incorporated into the spreadsheets, then we were able to issue the fixes and identify those students for you that were indeed approved for those tickets. So we realized that it was challenging. We want you to know we appreciate so much your attention to detail, because without that, then it would have gone out publicly. So we really appreciate and value your critical review. So just want to acknowledge the fact that the system is working in the fact that we're getting to quality data and that public reporting and that accuracy that we want before we go out publicly. So this internal step is catching the things that we want to be able to rectify before we go public with the accountability data. So at this point, let me pause there and see if we have another slide. We do have this data review. It is closing today, just in about a half an hour. So we have staff that are taking questions right now and helping resolve those issues that have been found within the data. So we appreciate that. Keep up the good work. We will support and provide accurate data in the end. So we will get to that in the end. And so now at this point, Jenny, I want to see if there are any questions.
No questions on the data quality control process, but we've had a couple of ACT questions come in.
Okay, Shara?
So Shara, the first question is, what training do the administrators need to complete for the fall senior ACT administration? If they had administration code and inclusion training last year, do they need to have that training again before they administer the fall assessment?
Okay, yes, thank you, Jenny. That's a good question. So yes, I have been getting those questions as well. So if you had your admin code and or inclusions training back in the spring for spring testing, then you don't need to redo those trainings. So you are good to go. If you're new and you haven't had those trainings, then yes. Remember, they're based on a calendar year. If you had them in the spring, you're good to go. The couple of things that you do need to do is we've had, you can go on to the ACT hosted website, and there you'll find a couple of trainings. You'll find an accommodations webinar. So if you are somebody that are over the accommodations or deal with accommodations, you'll need to take that training. Then there is the ACT and the KDE training is also on that website. There's a video, and then there is the PowerPoint that went along with that training. And then ACT had an overview of the administration of the ACT for this fall. That training video and PowerPoint is there as well. So that is all that's required.
Great, Sherry. You have one additional question. Where do we perform the select test date task?
Okay, so that is in the ACT Pearson Access Next. So now there's two different Pearson Access Next, or PAN as you'll hear us refer it. There is the KSA PAN, and then there's the ACT PAN. So if you have not been set up in that and you're not familiar, send me an email and I will get you loaded, and I will get you access and help you with any additional questions you may have. All right.
Thank you, Sherry. There are no additional questions for the DAC Webcast team.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Shara, for that good information. I will note for you that our next DAC webcast is September 14th, which is the same time we have scheduled our accountability standard setting meeting. So we will provide updates for you at that closer to that time to see if there are important updates that need to be presented or if that needs to be postponed. So look for more information in the Monday emails. And until then, we wish you just nothing but the best for your return to school. And until we see you again, please stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks.